terms of, non-REM versus REM sleep, where we talk about getting deep sleep, obviously we got a lot of different trackers these days. People are asking these questions. Can you give us a quick review of non-REM versus REM sleep and whether we should be focusing just on the deep sleep portion?
Absolutely. But let me just, before I start that, I want to just follow up with what you were just saying. I always tell people that when you see that Major League Baseball player on the field for 3 hours, he has spent those 21 hours preparing for it. It's what they've done all along, and you see them for this small period of time. But that, their schedules can be so arduous, and the work that they have to put in and we'll talk more about their schedules as we go further.
But they work weekends, right? They don't get weekends off.
They work more than you and I do, for sure. Okay, so let's, coming back to your question about non-REM versus REM sleep, I think the best place to begin with would be to start by defining sleep. So sleep is a normal physiological state in which there's perceptual disengagement from the environment and unresponsiveness to the environment. Now, it's reversible, which is not how we differentiate it from coma, right? Which is a pathological state that looks very similar to sleep, but we cannot wake people up from it. And although, and although somebody is when they are asleep, it looks very peaceful. It is in fact quite an active process, in the sense that your brain waves are quite active. There are different neurochemicals in the brain being secreted at different times. So to answer your question, depending on what your brain waves look like, there are really two main stages of sleep. It's the rapid eye movement of sleep, or the REM sleep, and non-rapid eye movement or non-REM sleep. And these phases, each phase is equally important because there are different processes occurring in each stage. So typically when most people normally fall asleep, we fall into sleep through light sleep, then we have some amount of deep sleep, and then we have some amount of dream or REM sleep, and then we wake up, and that's a typical sleep cycle. It's approximately 90 minutes long. And so REM sleep is about 20 to 25% of your total sleep time, while non-REM sleep is 75 to 80%. And of course, non-REM sleep is very imaginatively, it's divided into stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And so stage 1 is that very light sleep from which you can easily be woken up from. And you're preparing to fall asleep. Stage 2 is a stage in which your body is now preparing to enter into stage 3, or deep sleep. And so your heart rate, your blood pressure, your breathing, your body temperature, all are reduced. And in fact, that's about 50% of your total sleep time. And then there's deep sleep, or delta sleep, which is about 20% of your total sleep time. Now, the functions really vary. So in your deep sleep, your muscles are fully relaxed. Your heart rate, your breathing is completely slowed down. It is more difficult to wake you up from deep sleep. And when you wake up from that stage, you're more likely to be groggy.
Yes.
So what deep sleep does is it's the restorative portion of your sleep, in which your blood pressure is lowered. It allows for regeneration, repair. Your growth hormone is secreted. Your memories are consolidated, and in fact, all unnecessary stuff, memory stuff, is pruned, and only the relevant information is stored. So in fact, one good sign of good memory is how much you can actually forget in deep sleep.
Interesting.
So and in dream sleep or REM sleep adds emotional context to your memories. So any disorder that hampers the progression of stages of sleep, that it'll reduce the amount of deep sleep or dream sleep you have. So think about, sleep apnea, certain movement disorders, medications, alcohol, which disrupts REM sleep. If you drink caffeine too close to your bedtime, that'll hamper the progression into deep sleep. And especially, if you think about athletes, any sort of aches and pains, muscle aches, they can prevent deep sleep from happening. Pain medication will prevent progression of sleep. And things like external noise or a warm room temperature. And I think you had a question in there about whether one stage of sleep was better than the other. Did you?
Well, more just around the sort of the definitions. I mean, I know there's obviously the different functions of both, which there's a great explanation there for listeners as well of of trimming that goes on in the non-REM sleep, and then all the synergy that happens in the REM sleep and the emotion that comes with it. I think is such a big part. And you talked about the deep sleep being so key, and I've read that the REM sleep, the biggest chunk is typically towards right before we wake up, is sort of a bigger portion of that REM sleep. Is that something that, and for that reason, not getting enough sleep or waking up too early can start to compromise that? Is that true? Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, I can tell you've done your homework well. You're right. So yes. So most of your deep sleep will occur within 3 to 4 hours of you going to sleep, and most of your dream sleep, which is modulated by your circadian rhythms, happens mostly in the second half of the night. And so for somebody who goes to bed at 11, wakes up at 7, most of your deep sleep would have occurred before 1 in the morning, and most of your dream sleep will occur between, say, 3 and 7 in the morning. And yes, if you wake up too early, then you are cutting short your dream sleep.
Mm-hmm. And, obviously we're talking about athletes, but if we even take a little tangent to sort of parents or parents with young children who are up frequently through the night, for someone who's waking up 2, 3, 4 times a night, what is that going to be doing to their sleep quality?
Well, so obviously, this is an external factor that's disrupting their sleep. So their sleep quality will definitely be reduced. The important thing to remember, though, is that, there are some people who have difficulty going back to sleep.
Okay.
And then there are others who will readily fall asleep. So if you're in that category of people who has more difficulty falling asleep once their sleep has been stressed, then it's going to be even more difficult for you to go into the deeper stages of sleep. And that's just something to keep in mind. There is this phenomena, Mark, that it's called sleep reactivity, which basically means it's a trait that we have, and and what it means is that there's some people, when they are stressed out, will develop a deterioration in their sleep, while others won't. Mm-hmm. And so for example, imagine if there were 2 rookies who were joining a team at the same time, and there was one who had a higher sleep reactivity. Well, that rookie would more likely develop sleep problems, while the other one might have a few issues when they just start off, but then they'll settle down.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to circle back to the athlete side of things and talk about that idea of, obviously, various things keep people up whilst they're on the road and traveling. And so it's interesting to see that there's, a genetic component here where some people can just get back to bed more easily whilst others can struggle to stay up. In your experience, what are some of the other sort of common sleep challenges that you would see in athletes, baseball players in particular?
Well, so I think a good place to begin for your audience would be to describe what a typical baseball schedule during the season looks like, because then the sleep challenges become quite obvious. So,
Perfect.
like you were just saying, the regular season runs from, say, late March, early April to late September, early October, and that's 162 games, followed by a postseason, which you want to go to.
Yeah,
and
that's a good thing. You guys did quite well this year. World Series champions. Congratulations.
Yep. Well, thank you very much. So the postseason can run into early November. It's an additional 20 games. Now, because of the sheer number of games they play, and the games have to be played on several consecutive days, so in the same ballpark. So typically it's 3-4 games, and then they pack up. They fly to the next destination that night after they finished that game. And then, because they may have a game the next day. Mm-hmm. And so that's number one. The second thing that is unique to Major League Baseball is that they may have day games that begin at noon or 1, alternating with night games that begin after like 6 p.m. and therefore, so on some nights, they have to wake up 3 or 4 hours earlier than their regular wake up time. And of course, sometimes they do have double hitters because of poor weather and because of rain delays.
Yeah, making up games. Yep.
Yep. And then and I'm sure you've noticed that in the last few seasons they've added overseas games to Asia or London,
Japan,
so,
London. Yes.
Yep. So there's jet lag associated with that, and they you're talking about they do work through the weekend, and so they have one day off every 10 games or so. And sometimes they can choose to travel on those days. And other days, there can be some rules about that. So now with that background, the first major sleep challenge, of course, is cumulative fatigue.